They laughed at her the moment she stepped onto the mats. A black woman in a white belt. What chance did she have against their undefeated black belt? But just 14 seconds later, the room went silent. What happened next shocked the entire dojo. The moment she walked into the dojo, all eyes turned toward her. The sound of bodies hitting mats, the shuffle of feet, and the sharp slap of palm against floor seemed to pause for just a second as students took notice. At first, it was quiet. Then came the whispers. Within moments, the whispers grew into chuckles and finally loud, careless laughter that echoed against the padded walls. Does she even know what Jiu-Jitsu is? One of the students sneered, elbowing his friend. She looks more like someone who should be doing yoga, not fighting, another added, and the group broke into laughter again. Maya stood still, holding her gym bag in one hand. Her eyes swept across the room, catching the smirks, the doubtful glances, the mocking smiles. She had seen that look before, too many times. It was the look of people who had already decided her worth before she ever had the chance to prove it. Slowly, she set her bag down and tightened her borrowed white belt. The belt was plain, a beginner's rank, but she tied it with the precision of someone who had been on the mats for years. Though it was her first day in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class, this wasn't her first time in combat sports. She had wrestled in high school and studied judo in college. She knew how to move, how to fight, how to endure. But none of that mattered to the people in this room. To them, she was just an outsider. Worse, she was a black woman stepping into a space where they didn't expect her to belong. The dojo's pride and leader, Darren, stood at the front. He was everything the students admired. Tall, muscular, wrapped in a black belt that symbolized years of dedication. His reputation was built on dominating anyone who dared to challenge him. He didn't even need to speak. The smirk on his face told Maya everything she needed to know. He saw her as a joke, just like the rest. Maya felt the weight of their stares pressing down on her, but she didn't flinch. She refused to. For years, she had carried the same truth with her, that people will doubt you, laugh at you, even try to push you aside. But none of that mattered if you had the discipline to stand tall. As the class began to warm up, Maya's mind was steady. She didn't let the laughter sink in. She focused on her breathing, her steps, the feel of the mat under her feet. Every mockery around her became background noise. She wasn't here for their approval. She wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here for herself. Maya had come for one reason, and one reason only, to prove that respect is never given, it's earned. And soon, everyone in that dojo was about to learn that lesson in the most unforgettable way. The class began the way it always did, warm-up drills, rolls, and light sparring. The mats squeaked under bare feet, the air thick with sweat and anticipation. Maya moved through the exercises quietly, her focus razor-sharp. She executed each drill with precision, her breathing controlled, her movements smooth. But not everyone saw her effort. Some of the men rolled their eyes when paired with her, treating it like punishment rather than practice. They went through the motions carelessly, confident she couldn't possibly push them. To them, sparring with her was nothing more than wasted time, like practicing against a mannequin. Whispers traveled across the dojo like wildfire. "Why is she even here?" one muttered. "She won't last the week," another replied, grinning. Still, Maya never responded. She had learned long ago that silence was her greatest weapon. Instead of feeding the noise, she let her actions speak, no matter how small. And then everything shifted. Darren, the black belt, the dojo's undefeated pride, stepped forward. His presence alone drew attention. The chatter quieted instantly. A grin tugged at his lips as he clapped his hands together, the sound sharp and commanding. "All right," he said, voice dripping with confidence. "Let's have a little fun. Why don't you go against me?" The room erupted in cheers and laughter. This was what they had been waiting for. The new girl against their champion. To them, it wasn't a contest, it was entertainment. They pictured her scrambling on the mat, gasping for breath, maybe even tapping before the match truly began. "Careful, Darren, don't break her in half," one of the students called out, earning another round of laughter. Maya didn't flinch. She simply nodded, tying her belt tighter around her waist. Her fingers lingered for a moment on the knot, almost like a silent ritual. Then she stepped forward, walking toward the mat with a calm, steady pace. On the inside, however, her heart was racing. She wasn't blind to the pressure. This wasn't just a sparring match. This was a test, a trial by fire. If she crumbled here, she would never be taken seriously. But if she stood her ground, everything would change. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling the countless hours of training she had put in. Wrestling mats, judo throws, endless grappling drills. All of it had prepared her for this exact moment. Darren had strength and status, but she had something he didn't expect: technique, patience, and the element of surprise. The two of them stood face to face on the mat. Darren's grin widened, as if he were already savoring his victory. Maya's expression, however, was unreadable, calm, controlled, and unshaken. The dojo instructor raised his hand, his voice commanding. "Are you ready?" Maya gave a small nod. Darren rolled his shoulders, smirking. The room leaned forward, every pair of eyes locked on the two figures in the center of the mat. The referee's hand dropped. "Begin." The air itself seemed to hold its breath. What happened next would silence the laughter forever. The moment Darren stepped forward, his confidence showed in every movement. His stance was casual, his guard loose, his smile smug. He wasn't taking this match seriously, not for a second. To him, Maya was nothing more than practice, a warm-up, a joke. He reached for her arm with a lazy grip, expecting no resistance. But Maya exploded into action. Like lightning, she slipped under his arm, her body low and controlled. She hooked his leg with perfect timing, her hips twisting with precision only years of practice could create. Gasps filled the room. Students who had been leaning back now sat up straight, their laughter freezing on their faces. Darren stumbled, his balance ripped away from him. For the first time, his expression faltered. "What the?" he muttered, trying to reset, but Maya was already 2 steps ahead. Her transition was flawless. In one fluid motion, she captured his wrist, swung her leg across his chest, and locked her ankles together. She had drilled this sequence countless times, perfecting every inch of the movement. The angle of her hips, the torque in her shoulders, the way her weight bore down on his arm. It was textbook. The dojo went silent. Every eye locked on the scene unfolding. The great Darren, the undefeated black belt, the pride of the dojo, was suddenly trapped, his arms stretched and vulnerable. His confident smirk was gone, replaced by raw panic. He struggled, thrashing, trying to shake her off. He twisted his body, searching for escape, but Maya adjusted with calm precision, tightening her hold. Each time he moved, she countered, sinking the armbar deeper. "Is this really happening?" one student whispered, barely able to believe what he was seeing. "No way. Darren can't lose," another muttered, though his voice wavered with doubt. Darren's face flushed red. He used every ounce of his strength, every trick he knew, but nothing worked. Maya wasn't just holding him. She was dismantling him. And then the pressure built. His elbow joint screamed. The pain was sharp, undeniable, inescapable. Top, top, top. His hand slapped against the mat 3 furious times. The sound echoed like thunder in the silent dojo. 14 seconds. That's all it took. The mighty black belt, the man no one dared to challenge, had been submitted faster than anyone could process. Maya released the hold immediately, rolling gracefully back to her feet. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply bowed her head respectfully, her breathing calm and steady. Darren lay on the mat, stunned, his pride shattered. He couldn't even bring himself to look at her. Around the room, jaws hung open. The students who had laughed at her earlier were frozen in disbelief, their eyes wide, their confidence in their champion destroyed. No one dared to speak. In just 14 seconds, Maya had rewritten the story of that dojo forever. Darren's face twisted as the reality sank in. His arm throbbed, his pride stung even worse. He had been submitted, not after a long, exhausting battle, not after a war of skill, but in a mere 14 seconds. The man who had built his reputation on dominance, on being untouchable, had been undone by the very person the dojo laughed at when she first walked in. Top, top, top. The sound of his hand slapping the mat still echoed in the students' ears. For them, it was surreal, like watching a mountain crumble in front of their eyes. The dojo, usually filled with chatter and confidence, now felt like a church after a sermon. Silent, heavy, uncomfortable. Some students covered their mouths, their eyes wide. Others sat frozen, unable to process what they had just seen. A few even glanced at each other, as if hoping someone would tell them it was a dream. Their champion, their symbol of strength and pride, had been dismantled in seconds. And not by another black belt, not by a visiting master, but by the woman they had ridiculed just minutes earlier. Maya, calm as ever, loosened her hold and released Darren with care. She didn't celebrate. She didn't pump her fist or shout in triumph. She simply stood, brushed off her GI, and bowed respectfully. Her breathing was steady, her posture unshaken, her expression unreadable. That quiet dignity made the moment even more powerful. Darren, still seated on the mat, avoided her gaze. His face burned red with embarrassment. His smirk was gone, replaced with a hollow stare at the floor. He had entered the match full of arrogance, expecting to humiliate her for fun. Instead, he had been humiliated himself, and in front of the very students who idolized him. No one dared to laugh anymore. The same students who mocked her now looked at Maya with a new expression, one they hadn't given her before. Respect, and perhaps even fear. They realized in that moment that skill and discipline mattered far more than appearances, gender, or assumptions. One student finally whispered, almost in awe, she beat him. Another shook his head, still stunned. No, she destroyed him. Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. The truth was written across every stunned face in the room. As Darren stood slowly, rubbing his sore arm, the silence pressed heavier. For the first time in years, he wasn't the center of admiration. He wasn't the hero of the room. He was just another man who underestimated the wrong opponent. And Maya, once laughed at, once dismissed as nothing, was now the one every student watched with reverence. The dojo had changed in just 14 seconds. From that day forward, no one mocked her again. Instead, they listened, they learned, and they respected her presence. Maya had taught them all a lesson without saying a single word. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And sometimes, it only takes a few seconds to change everything. After class, the atmosphere inside the dojo was unrecognizable. Just an hour earlier, it had been filled with mocking laughter, snide whispers, and careless dismissals. But now, a heavy silence lingered, broken only by hushed voices and cautious footsteps. The energy had shifted. The very students who once rolled their eyes at Maya now approached her with genuine respect. Their expressions were no longer smug, but curious, almost apologetic. One of the younger men scratched the back of his neck and admitted quietly, "That was incredible." His voice carried awe instead of sarcasm. Another shook his head, still processing what he had witnessed. "I've been training here for years, and I've never seen Darren tap so fast." His tone was almost reverent, as if Maya had revealed a side of Jiu-Jitsu none of them had ever understood. Even Darren, the man whose pride had been shattered, finally found the courage to speak. His usual arrogance was gone. His voice, quieter than anyone expected, carried an unfamiliar sincerity. "You've got real talent," he said slowly. "I underestimated you, and that was my mistake." The room fell silent at his words. For Darren to admit fault was a rare moment in itself. His acknowledgement sealed what everyone already knew. Maya wasn't just another student. She had earned her place on the mats. But Maya didn't smile. She didn't bask in their praise or gloat in her victory. She simply nodded politely, her face calm and steady. She hadn't come to humiliate Darren or to embarrass anyone. She came to train, to test herself, and to prove a truth she had carried with her all her life. Strength has no gender, and respect is not given, it's earned. That lesson struck the students harder than any choke or submission ever could. They realized how easily they had dismissed her before even giving her a chance. They saw how their arrogance had blinded them, and how quickly their assumptions had been shattered. From that day forward, no one in that dojo ever laughed at Maya again. Instead, they greeted her with respect. They partnered with her in training, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to learn from her. Her presence became a reminder that Jiu-Jitsu was about more than belts or egos. It was about discipline, humility, and the art of technique over brute force. And her story didn't stay within those four walls. Word spread beyond the dojo of the woman who had walked into a hostile room, faced ridicule, and submitted the undefeated black belt in just 14 seconds. Her story reached people who had been underestimated in their own lives. Women told they were too weak, men told they didn't belong, and anyone who had ever been mocked for daring to try. Maya became more than just a student. She became a symbol, a living example that only takes one moment, sometimes just a handful of seconds, to change perceptions forever. And the lesson was clear. In jiu-jitsu and in life, 14 seconds can be all it takes to prove everyone wrong. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it helps us keep bringing you more inspiring stories just like this one.